Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Safety Brief. If you've been tuning in to any of our previous episodes, you've probably heard us mention IoT devices before, quite a few times. But what exactly are these IoT devices, and why are they becoming such a big concern in cybersecurity? Today, we're diving into what we're calling the IoT invasion. Because let's face it, these devices are slowly creeping into every corner of our homes and even workplaces. As always, we have Mike and Matt here to lend their expertise. Thank you both for joining us again today, guys. Now, as I said, we talk about IoT devices pretty often on the safety brief. But just to kick things off for anyone who's new here, could you break down what an IoT device actually is? And why have these gadgets become such a hot topic in cybersecurity?
Most certainly. It's funny. The name of today's discussion is the IoT invasion. We were joking just before going on live that it really is an invasion. I think it's interesting just due to the rapid adoption at really an unprecedented rate. We've seen IoT come in the form of smart devices. It could be a smart baby camera, it could be a smart doorbell, could be a smart fridge, could be a smart washing machine, really anything that has some form of intelligence added to it, and where that intelligence is gleaned from being an internet connected device. IoT means Internet of Things. And so, really removing any prerequisite that it has to be a quote unquote computer. And this is different than mobile devices. This is different, right? So, we're not talking about phones and tablets right now. We're talking specifically around the security camera, the Ring doorbell, the Amazon Echo Dot, the Google Home, the Apple HomePod, things like this. And so I think the rate of adoption, mainly because of they've been priced and positioned at such a point that some are very very cheap. Other ones, like if you want a intelligence internet connected fridge or freezer or washer dryer, those are a little bit more expensive, obviously. But where we've really seen this kind of take off is, like I said, the Amazon Echo Dot, the Alexa suite, right, as well as Google HomePod and whatnot. And you have to ask, some of these are priced at such a competitive rate that they're practically giving them away. And we know that nothing's free and nothing costs nothing. And so ought to ask yourself, why is that cost being subsidized? Why is that cost lower than it is? People look at the Apple HomePod as an example and the cost difference with the Echo Dot, and they're like, what exactly is going on? Why is one almost an eighth or a tenth of the cost? And you have to look at the practices of the company behind it, and where are they making up that cost deficit? Are they selling data that's generated by that device, right? And so, certainly a relevant topic as far as IoT is concerned.
Yeah, no, I think another thing to think about is some of these devices you're purchasing as well, you're not even aware that it's an IoT device. Like
Right.
for me, I just purchased a two-in-one washer and dryer, thinking it's the coolest thing ever, but I did not know that it needs to be connected to Wi-Fi and it has a phone app. So like all this stuff wasn't highly, I guess, advertised where I purchased the washer and dryer. So it came, it got delivered, and when I went to go turn it on, of course, I have to connect my phone, I have to connect it to the internet. And being in cybersecurity, I was like, oh man, I was not aware of all this. I just saw that it did both in one machine, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. So yeah, we're definitely inviting these things into our homes, sometimes not even knowing until they're already there. So let's break down some of the concerns. What would you say some of the most common security vulnerabilities that devices present? I think this is something both consumers and businesses really need to be aware of.
Just owning them. That's the biggest threat. If you have IoT devices, they have to be secured. Most businesses, I hate to say this, aren't smart enough to do that. They're going to leave them open. They're going to use them for what their purpose is. They're going to put them on a network they shouldn't be on. And then they're going to act shocked when somebody finds a way to get into them. So just owning them is one of the biggest vulnerabilities that you can actually have.
Yeah, and I think, to Matt's point around owning them, Elizabeth, to your point, even as well, they are not, all of the features are advertised heavily. We bought a smart, I'm installing light fixtures, replacing light fixtures in my house, and one of them was just a closet light, but now you find out on the box it can change colors. It can be scheduled to turn on and off. And it's like, you have to ask at some point when these features are so gimmicky that there's no practical real use to them. Like, sure, certainly it's cool to be able to turn living room green or red or whatever, right? But you have to ask yourself, what are you trading for such a feature set? What are you exchanging? What are you giving up? And sometimes it's money. You're paying more for more features, and that makes sense. Sometimes it's privacy. You're getting access to something for free, and in exchange for that, you're submitting your data to be used for the sake of improving the platform. None of us have paid for Waze, Google Maps. Apple Maps is typically built into the Apple device. But all these map apps they don't really cost anything, which is funny because if you go back into the days of TomToms, you'd have to spend at least 120, 150, 250 bucks to have one of those in your car. Got to ask, like, how did it all get free all of a sudden? And it didn't. Somebody bought it. Somebody's paying for it. But, how are they offsetting that cost? It's that usage data, right? It's that usage data. And so, whenever you look at something like this, you have to ask yourself, number one, why does it cost what it costs? Number two, what am I giving up in exchange for those features? And number three, is it worth it? Is it actually worth it? Is it really worth the feature that's being advertised in exchange for the thing I'm giving up? The topic of these smart home devices specific to nurseries and baby monitoring, and it's a pressure plate. A lot of moms and new parents want certainty over the safety and security of their baby, and that's a natural and good and instinctual thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But we see a lot of companies innovating in less than ethical ways with feature and cutting edge feature without thinking about the privacy and the security of the home at the same time. And so, I get that there are smart devices that you could put on your baby's foot and you can track its heart rate. You could track this, you could track that. But, we have to ask ourselves how much long running data do we have on the safety of using these devices? We still really don't have great data on how Wi-Fi affects the human brain and even biochemistry, right? Let alone putting a device on a newborn infant that doesn't have, like I said, a long-standing medical precedent. Doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's automatically bad because we don't have data. We just have to acknowledge that there is risk, and most don't inventory that.
What about your personal health data?
Oh, yeah.
There are
your
rings
Fitbit,
that you
your
can
Apple
buy.
Watch.
Not even that. Not even that. There are rings that are designed to be worn that will provide health updates around all kinds of different items based on the biofeedback that is reported by said ring.
Right.
That connects to an app. That app is on your phone. Your phone has the capability of communicating, and all that data goes back to somebody's server.
Right.
So you're voluntarily providing some random third party all of your health data.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to that point, people will say, oh, it's only $50. And it's like, you got to ask yourself, like, to mass manufacture a piece of technology like that in such a short amount of time, is it really $50? Or who's paying some of that bill, right? Is it marketers? Is it advertisers? Is it medical companies? Because they'd love to know geographically what the average heart rate is of Floridians around this time of year so that they could market some form of profit model, right? Like, again, everybody's in a business, everybody's trying to make money, but it's interesting how we're so quick, and again, it comes back to my point of so quick to trust and adopt these things with such a limited, how do you say, historical precedent. I think there is room for IoT. I've been able to dream and drool over fully automated lawnmower, right? It has a home base station, so think of your Roomba in your house. But it's sure enough, it's just parked outside. It maps your yard. It goes ahead and says what's your property line, what's not, and it goes and just cuts the lawn for you. Very nice, very seamless, right?
Are you saying you're dreaming of this as in you want it to exist, or that you've actually got one?
Oh no, I definitely don't have one. They're $5,000 to $6,000 based on what I've seen, but they definitely exist. They
and
definitely exist.
it's a
You know,
very interesting thing to watch.
it is. It is. But not saying I don't like mowing my own lawn, but there are, I see the appeal of, I guess, some of these IoT devices. They have to be smart. They have to be connected. They have to be connected in some way, but it's outside my house, right? It's outside my house. It's maybe on its own internet connection. And we've talked a lot about segmentation on the
Yeah.
safety brief. It's never going to get old. It's never going to get, how do you say, overplayed. The concept of segmentation being separating devices by use case and by security levels. So yeah, almost every home router now can come with a guest Wi-Fi network or a guest SSID, as it's known as. Connect your smart devices to that. Leave your trusted devices on your own private network. Contain it if you can. It's a very practical, it's a very easy mitigation step, because again, we may not have a washer dryer that's smart, but we have sound machines and baby monitors and all of these things,
There's
And
another
so
And if you're
section to
not
that.
sure, and if you're not sure how to do that,
Right.
when you're setting up your Wi-Fi, your provider will do that for you as well. They'll ask you when they're
Your
setting you up
provider
if you
will
need a guest Wi-Fi. Say yes.
right, but they will not change the password for the guest Wi-Fi.
Right.
Yes,
Most
you
of
need
them
to
are
do.
enabled by default. The password
Right.
is something generic. If you are the typical homeowner in America, then you have never changed the password to your guest Wi-Fi. And your
Or
password
your
to
main
your
Wi-Fi.
router is probably going to be something that is identifiable based on your location.
Yeah.
So make sure that you are changing those passwords,
Correct.
because it does not do any difference to put all of these things on a separate network if you're not going to change the password and they're going to be able to get in anyways.
Right.
Because the guest network, while yes, it's segmented off, if they have access to that, they can still crawl the entire network. So it's not like going through and hard segmenting.
Right.
Your home routers are not that level. In fact, your home routers are, well, if you were to talk to Netgear or Linksys or any of the other companies out there, not guaranteed to provide you an internet connection or a connection to a device further than 10 feet. Even though they advertise this crazy amount of range, they will flat tell you that anything over 10 feet, they cannot guarantee connectivity wise.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the level of stuff that you're using. You're not using a large scale Palo Alto firewall. You're not using, these industrial grade Wi-Fi extenders or anything else that's in there. You're using something that you can buy at Best Buy for $29.99. It does not have world-class technology in it. It has the cheapest parts that you could possibly ask for. And that means that those become their own vulnerabilities. You now have an IoT device that's connected to the equivalence of a Fisher-Price router that has its own vulnerabilities that we've seen being exploited regularly. Linksys being one of the prime offenders, which is hilarious because they're owned by Cisco, that used to claim that they built the internet. Well, right now, they built the vulnerability. Everybody else is just dealing with it. So, you have all of this stuff that you would think is great, but all of it has so many weak points that it honestly,
Limitations.
yeah, it makes you want to just go back to where you don't have any of this stuff in your house. That's the safest way to do it. Just get rid of all your technology, everybody. Just throw it away.
Well, let's be
And as-
realistic, because let's face it, we
Right.
all don't want to fully disconnect and miss out on cool new devices. Just like Mike said, even the lawnmower is enticing, because these devices do offer some sort of convenience in a way,
Right.
which is why they're so popular. But how can both consumers and businesses find that balance between enjoying the perks of an IoT while still keeping their networks secure?
Absolutely. And there's there's an emotional intelligence required here to weigh out the difference between hype and value. Hype and value are not the same things. Hype is, I need the new iPhone because it's the latest and greatest, and they have a new Desert Storm color and whatever the heck they have.
added a
right?
number to it,
They,
so I have to have it.
Literally internals. This new watch is not new; it's a new color, but it's marketed as a new watch, right? Like all of
Pretty
these
much.
things. Separate hype from value. If there is, hey, you know what? The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max have both increased in size by 0.25%. If you want the smaller phone with a bigger screen, you can do that. You want better battery life, you can do that. That's value, right? Like, that's value, right? Less time charging, less time tethered. That's all value. So you have to separate hype from value. And specific to these IoT devices at home, do you need your closet light to change color? No, you don't, right? It's hype. It's not value. Is there value in having a doorbell camera that can also be a security camera to take track and see who's dropping packages and who's maybe stopped by your front door? I think certainly. I think the video doorbell is a great innovation. I think it's a good step forward so long as it's secure, as well as you look at where is your video data going and who has access to it, right? So
There's
like I know
another-
Arlo's private. Go ahead.
There's another part to that we're not thinking about, and that's the alert fatigue aspect of those doorbell
Right.
cameras. Because I'll tell you this, if I get another freaking notification that comes up because a bug walked across my camera, I'm going to go out there and smash it with a hammer.
How sensitive it is. Exactly.
Yeah, and it will do that all the time. You get a moth that flies, and it says there's motion at your front door. Yeah,
I'm sorry,
you're
I
right.
just wanna
There is.
say-
It's a bug.
I just want to say how Matt is feeling right now is how most of our partners feel when they first
That's right.
onboard to Blockworks with the amount of security alerts. And they're so like they're not even looking at the alerts anymore because it's just another bug. There's no one at my
Right.
front door, and that's
Bugs
when you get
exist.
complacent.
I'm
and
not
that's
going
when
to
you
extinguish
miss
them.
the important
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
So
The problem it runs into,
I
how
get
do you
it, Matt.
balance that? Because you can't just not check. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
if I get a notification at 3 a.m, there's motion at my front door, I can guarantee you that A, I'm checking, and B, my hand is on my wireless hole puncher. Because I'm just going to
Doom
make
music
sure we're
intensifies when that alert
Yeah.
comes through at 3 a.m., right?
protected. There's a very strong desire for me to say, Alexa, lockdown protocol.
That's right.
And then
That's right.
everything goes red.
That's right.
I will
That's
say
right.
I use a security system with my doorbell, and it does help with the alert fatigue because they do kind of shuffle out some of them. They provide videos of just alerts, so like I'm not getting a full feed. Like if I want to go back and see who came at my front door at 3 p.m., it takes a short clip. It's not a whole video of the entire day and things of that nature. And they'll call me and say, "Hey, we saw this. It looks a little sus. Would you like us to call the cops?" Or, "Hey, your fire alarm went off." So it is nice to have someone else on the other end kind of managing for you. It does help with the alert fatigue. Kind of like what Blockworks does for our partners, helping with alert fatigue. So
Yeah, and there is a strong theme here with IoT that you're going to get what you pay for. And so a lot of people gravitate towards the cheaper product. And in today's market and climate and economy, I get it. Like I'm not faulting anybody for that. But you merely have to take inventory of the risk. No different than if you pay less for an automobile or less for an automotive part because it's how do you say, not OEM, right? It's a rebuilt part or whatever. You're taking some level of risk by paying less, right? I think the funniest example, and maybe this is the biggest scam of all time, but printer ink. Printer ink is one of the biggest things we see people like, why in the world would I pay $40 for printer ink when on Amazon it's $3.99 or something like audaciously cheap? And it's like, what are you paying for? You're paying for like a napkin with ink on it in that cartridge,
Yeah.
right? Like it's so ridiculous how much of a scam it is. But again, people are driven by price, and cost analysis on purchases is a real thing. But personally, because I'm always about practical takeaways here on Safety Brief, is we leverage Arlo at our home. The reason we leverage Arlo, and I can do a quick share just on their pledge to privacy, it doesn't mean that it's entirely secure because they say so, but you don't have every how do you say, IoT company advertising in the way that Arlo does, specific to, hey, we take privacy seriously, we take security seriously, and privacy and security by design. This is the kind of stuff that you're looking for in IoT. If you're going to invite devices into your home, if you're going to put them on your home network, they need to be secure. Your data is your data, and it's there's a growing trend of people identifying that as much as I secure my phone number, my social security number, when I'm coming and going to my home and when I'm getting notifications and what kind of notifications I've set up is my data. Nobody should have access to that but me, right? And so, but the neat thing here is, again, They limit as much as they can as far as data collection, things like that. Now, what about Arlo? Well, you're going to pay $200 for a video doorbell. It's not going to be $80, but again, you have to take into consideration of what does it cost, and like within the scope of the full Arlo suite, there's a monthly subscription, right? And so, and that allows you to like Matt was saying, you know, you're getting false positives. This has the ability to tell you, hey, a package was delivered, somebody's waiting at your door. It has like weight analysis based on the camera. There's an animal outside your door. Like they have all of those algorithms built out. So it's cool, but that's feature and value to me. If I know that if it's 3 a.m. and I get a notification there's an animal at my door versus there's a human at my door, to Matt's point, the response is going to be different, right? Like, what is a human doing at my door at 3 a.m. versus an animal? Animals are outside. That's their space. They're fine with that. As long as they're not inside my door at 3 a.m., I'm good to go. And so, but I think, you know, just giving a positive example at Arlo, they do security cameras, they do doorbells, they do a lot of different things with IoT. Certainly have their own security system. This isn't a plug. There's no discount code. There's no affiliate link. But, you know, there are companies out there doing the right thing, is my point. They are leaning into privacy. They are marketing this to consumers because they know that there is a consumer base that's recognizing that data collection matters. And, you know, just like we talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you know, the iOS store disclosing what the privacy practices are of every single app. You know, I was tickled last night. My wife texted me and she said, hey, I need a new mobile phone game. What do you recommend? And literally, if I'm looking at this text, you know, learning is occurring, needless to say. She said, I don't mind buying a game if it has better privacy practices, because most free games are tracking you. And I was like, yep. And she's like, I've heard of a couple of things, but you know, it's just that common sense that says, hey, I'd rather spend $3 to $5 on a game that I know I'm going to play that is not going to track me and collect that data than take a free game. And, you know, whether it's Temple Run or Flappy Bird making its comeback or whatever, you know, you got to ask yourself why these things are free. You know,
and
if it's ad-based revenue, great. But if it's data collection, you got to ask yourself if it's worth it.
Yeah, and that was a topic we did cover on the safety brief. And it was the price of free application. We do have a blog on our website and a past episode if you want to dig into that topic a little deeper as well.
Right.
And that does bring up a good point about the risk involved. How about those older or unsupported IoT devices? What kinds of dangers do they pose, and what steps can organizations take to lessen those risks?
Yeah, I think, you know, consumers can think about it. You know, a lot of people can get a recall notice for an automotive part and feel the weight of the risk that they're inheriting. But I think very few recognize that, hey, Windows 7 is no longer supported by Microsoft, and there's no more security updates being sent, right? It's not being patched. It's continuously getting penetrated in the way of vulnerability testing, but it's not being patched. Those things are not being solved. So it's as if you're issuing a recall notice, but it's not getting resolved. And so what's interesting is I think those that are leveraging, you know, old technology is risk, and it's not because of hype. Again, we gotta weigh out the difference between hype and value. It is because of security protocol. And so again, you're looking for devices that are secure by design. If you're doing home security, highly recommend investing or looking at hardwired connections, not wireless cameras. The reason for that is, you know, again, who has access to that data stream? If it's a radio wave, to Matt's point, this is not military technology you're installing on your home. There's probably not encryption. You could probably hold up an antenna and intercept that video signal because it's probably not encrypted through the air, right? Again, what are you spending? $180 at Costco, right? Like, you get what you pay for. And so, but the difference with a hardline security system is there's a centralized DVR. That is where it is being stored. That is where it's being accessed. And certainly there could be mobile elements of it, mobile app elements of it, but that's how you secure it on the network side. So, you know, I think antiquated technology will have risks, will have vulnerabilities in the same way that Windows 7 has risks and vulnerabilities. And vendors aren't indefinitely just applying security patches. There's going to be a point where something is end of life or EOL, where they just stop. You know, they do this on iOS devices, they do this on Android devices, they do this on every form of device. They have to say, okay, enough is enough. Your car is a 1968 Buick. I'm not making the door handle or the brake pad for that car anymore, right? And you're going to say, okay, I get it. It's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, right? So, software providers are in the same way. They have to be held accountable to a certain longevity of their software and the security of it. But at some point, they cut rope and they say, we can't do it anymore. And so just educate yourself.
Here's the better question for you. You're talking about the longevity of it, and you're talking about the old, the age aspect of it. What about the sheer laziness aspect of it? When they're creating all of this stuff these days, they're not writing their own code. Right. They're going and stealing code from GitHub because it's freely able to be appropriated. Well, that code has vulnerabilities. That code's readily available. If there's something that is able to be exploited, it's out there. It's widely known. All you have to do is go search GitHub for it. So now you have the other piece of this, which is they have to be accountable for the software updates. But how are they being held accountable for the baseline software in the first place? What checks and balances are in there to ensure that the code they're using is not already vulnerable in the first place? Mm-hmm. And that puts a different perspective when you think out of the box, you're getting something that has time and effort being put in it because you're paying for the solution that you're putting into your location. But I mean, what happens when it already comes with a vulnerability out of the box, an egregious vulnerability? Let's look at the sunburst level of vulnerability. What if you have something of that level that you have no control over because you just bought a product and somebody else either cheaped out and appropriated code or didn't do validations before actually implementing the code?
No, it's a great point. And I think, again, there are some viewers listening that hear a little bit of tinfoil hat in this. And I think, again, the reason that this securing this vector matters is because it's a pivot point. It's a pivot point. So certainly everybody's going to agree that somebody hacking my laptop is bad. Very few, or I'd say marginally fewer, may say that hacking my Ring doorbell is bad. But here's the reality of it, is if they can get on, we call it a foothold or a point of persistence on your network, that becomes a launch point, a pivot point, that's a chink in the armor. So if I'm currently outside your environment, I do not know your Wi-Fi password, I don't know your access to your information, but I notice you got a pretty primitive doorbell camera or a pretty primitive security camera outside. Guess what? If I hack that, guess what's probably in a configuration file somewhere? Well, the password that makes it connected to the rest of the network. Now I have your network password, right? And so, again, the way that threat actors do this is they take a very small crevice in the rock, right? And they dig in and they build a very small, maybe very minute from a footprint standpoint, but a very significant pivot point that they can then laterally move, privilege escalation, gather reconnaissance and data, and take down a network. Nobody's hacking the mainframe from outside the mainframe. Somebody's getting in from a badge scan. Somebody's getting in from a phishing email. And so we're identifying IoT as maybe not the end of all evil, but it is an entry point, and it is an easy entry point, and it's a barrier of least resistance for threat actors because of the nature of your laptop that was $1,300 from HP has security protocols built in. It comes with an OS that's updated every Tuesday. It comes with antivirus that's backed by Blockworks SOC. It comes with all these things, right? That $80 or $30 Echo Dot has probably the cheapest PCB, the cheapest silicon, like the cheapest product, right? Because they want to profit off of it. So security wasn't built into the design of it. So I've always said to myself, if we do ever get one of these devices, it'll probably be a HomePod because of just Apple's historical reputation of not selling data. Doesn't mean they don't do it at all. It means they do it to the least degree necessary. Similar to Arlo, I'm going to spend more for that product due to the nature of the security and privacy I'm getting, right? Now, are Apple laptops worth $2,000 to $3,000? I definitely think there's margin in there, right? But there's a level of security that's built into that price, and people have to start shopping in a way that encourages that. And again, with the scale, stuff gets cheaper. So the more of these that are built, the more of these that are sold. Stuff that there is economy of scale there. But like Teslas when they first came out, 30, 40, 50, or I don't even think they touched 30. I think it was 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000. Now you have a Model 3 because of scale, because of cost, because of accessibility. You can get a incredible car for under 30 grand now, even used. And so, yeah. So I think, again, consumers are going to drive this market. Whenever we're going to the store with our credit card or debit card, that's what's going to change this. And so our ask, or I guess the practical takeaway is, don't invite anything into your home that's not trustworthy, device or person. And the device could very well be the weakest link in your environment. It's not your router, it's not your laptop, it's not your desktop, it's not whatever, but you have to look at security through the weakest link approach. That certainly I have concrete walls in my house, but if my back fence has a tiny tin lock mechanism and it's never locked, that's the weakest link, right? Accessing my property. So you just got to think of it that way, and it being a potential foothold in people's lives.
That's a great way to put it, Mike. And to close things off today, let's look ahead a little bit. How do you both see IoT security evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? And what should organizations be doing now to prepare for this? Get creative here.
If we were to forecast into the future, I can see IoT getting more secure and expensive, and I think by those designs, there is a direct correlation between how safe something is and how expensive it is. There are certain cars that have safety certifications and crash test safety ratings that people are willing to pay more for, and good on them, right? Good on them. There's a reason for that, and there's value in that. But I don't think the hype's going to go away. I think there are still products that are going to market off hype and still sell off hype, and you're going to have these Temu quality things that are absolute landfill, right? That just find their way into people's homes. But I do think there is a conscious consumer out there, and I think that their numbers are growing, and I do think that people take into consideration that bank robberies don't happen anymore, but debit cards and credit cards are hacked every day. And if it can serve as a pivot point, I don't want to give somebody that advantage, and I could do my due diligence in securing my home. But again, it's going to come down to a number of things. It's going to come down to awareness, number one, prioritization and budget, number two, because if you don't know it's insecure, you're not going to spend the money on something secure or more secure. But then I think, again, the industry has a responsibility to advertising an appeal to security. Really make that the leading feature set, and I think Apple's, again, not to toot their horn, but they have long been the bastion of secure with Apple. It's your data. I'll never forget the Apple icon with the padlock. It's iconic. It sticks with you. And so, and again, there's a reason why people spend $1,200 on a phone. Some of it's hype, some of it's value. And that's where, again, you got to make that distinction between what is hype, what is straight landfill, and what is tangible value, and then make the decision for yourself.
Any predictions or comments from you, Matt, before we close off for today?
Oh, we're going to end up in Wally. That's what we're going to end up in. I, for one, look forward to my floating chair that can provide everything that I ever need right in front of me.
Sustenance, entertainment.
Exactly. I mean, I'm looking forward to being able to sit there and say I'm hungry and I have a bucket of KFC that just manifests.
Magically appears.
I'm looking
I do see technology taking off crazy like that, but hopefully, like Mike said, hopefully security still sticks in the back of everyone's mind. Hopefully there's not just a give up aspect, because I feel like that could also happen to where people think, my data is already out there, because I've had a lot of conversations with people like that. Well, my data is already out there, it doesn't matter. Or when you're trying to make the switch to, I guess, better products or better produce. Well, I've already eaten all this bad stuff, so it doesn't matter. So hopefully that mind shift will happen.
It will down the road, but what's going to require that to actually happen is a major incident.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate to say
someone's got to touch the burner.
We as humans are dumb, and we do not change without something forcing us to change. And even when we do change, history has a very nasty tendency to repeat itself because we fail to learn from history. And as they say, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So
When you see that in cybersecurity all the time, how many
Mhm.
times have we heard, I don't have the budget for cybersecurity, I don't have the budget, a breach happens, you pay more than the budget that it would have
Budget
been.
magically appears.
Yeah,
Just
and then
goes
now it's
from,
like,
you
sign me
know,
up, sign me up, sign me up.
yeah,
Like Mike said, sometimes you just gotta touch the stove, I
it,
guess.
the
yeah,
cybersecurity budget thing is an interesting way of looking at it because, before breach, you're Walter White as just the lovable high school teacher. After the breach, you're freaking Heisenberg opening up a storage shed that has millions of dollars sitting in it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that happens. It's like, oh, now we need to take it seriously. It's like,
mm,
cool. So on top of all the money that you're out because you have to repair all of this, the money that you had to pay because somebody ransomed you and you're now on the hook to pay that, you're going to throw more money to
right.
finally add to your cyber infrastructure. How much could you have saved if you just, I don't know, weren't an Idaho potato in the first place
It
and
is
spent a
really
little bit
sad.
more time?
It is really sad when it could have all been prevented in the first place.
It's
Right.
because security and support as a whole generally falls in a cost center. It's not a revenue generating position within an
Right.
organization. So they understand and appreciate that there is going to be a loss. It's a loss leader area within an
Right.
organization. The goal is to lose as little as humanly possible while still
Right.
maintaining that level of security.
Right.
And it needs to
Mitigating that
change.
risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
needs to change. It needs to be looked at as this could be a revenue generating
Right.
area. If
Right.
you are leading with how can security make you money
Right.
instead of how is this going to lose you money because it's a loss leader area,
Right.
Yeah.
the mindset changes completely and you start to understand that the better your security posture, the more you stand out in a sea of mediocrity. I
Right.
see plenty of people that say I'm a one-man MSP. I offer all of these services. I'm 24/7. How?
Yeah.
How are you offering all of this and you're 24/7 and you're claiming that you have the best service that's available compared to somebody that is a third of the cost, has an entire team that can handle it and is actually 24/7, 365, and is actually a master because they have decades of experience backing this. That's the sea of mediocrity. All you have to do is just rise a tiny bit above that. Tiny bit.
Right.
And focusing on your security and showing how you're focusing on that. That's how you set yourself apart.
Most definitely. Two closing thoughts. One, if IoT is today's topic, I think things like Neuralink are a future topic because now we're embedding devices, IoT, into we're talking about our biochemistry, our bodies. So if people can say, well, my data's already out there. And it's like, I don't think you need what's going on in your brain out there, right? Like what's going on in your phone, your
Next
laptop's bad
level.
enough. Like, you don't need to subject it.
Call of Duty zombies in real life.
Yeah, I was gonna say it
Right.
makes me think of the I Am Robot with Will Smith,
Yeah.
where all the robots are controlled by like one bad robot. It
Oh
makes me
yeah.
think like we're all gonna be turned into,
Yeah, we have to be
know,
very careful. And
whatever
it's funny
whatever
because
they want.
most
Scary.
people will listen to this and be like, I'll never do that. Well, guess what? We all grew up with stranger danger. Don't get into a stranger's vehicle. Now we summon them from our mobile apps whenever we need a ride from the airport or a ride somewhere.
And we take food from them when we get in there.
That is
And
very
we take
true.
food, yeah. And then we have people, we just give out our address whenever we're hungry to people that will bring us food and we'll never see again. As well as the fact that, ultimately, same thing. Why would we ever do this? Well, maybe this Echo Dot device in your kitchen can read you the news and the weather and tell you how to cook a special meal. Most people wouldn't invite that into their home 20 years ago,
Yeah.
due to the lack of trust. So
It can
we'll
also
definitely
tell me
see
when
how
the
it
robot
evolves.
uprising is going to happen.
But the future has a lot of potential. We just need to really, really toe that security and privacy line safely, because it's no different. You go take your car and get an oil change before something happens. You want to protect that engine. You don't want to wait to have to rebuild that engine. That's illogical. So most understand the preventative maintenance that goes into automobiles. I wish I could make money on my 13 quart oil change, it's a total money sink. But what do I
Yeah.
get? I get a reliable functioning vehicle, and that's what I like. I like that peace of mind. And that's exactly what it is on the cybersecurity side. So invest a little bit, reap that benefit in peace of mind.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Well, that's all the time we have for today's discussion. Mike, Matt, thank you both for your insights as always, and thank you to anyone and everyone tuning in, whether you're watching or listening. Remember, we do go live with new episodes every Thursday between 2 and 3 p.m. Eastern Time, so be sure to join us next time. Until then, stay frosty.
Thanks all.